He merely glances at the beans rolling across the table and instantly realizes a deadly threat. The watchtower they're stationed on has begun to tilt. If they don't evacuate, the structure will eventually collapse, and everyone will perish in the sea. Worse still, this 4-person squad has been posted here for over 2 years, and their reserves of food and fresh water are nearly depleted. Per regulations, a new team is supposed to rotate in every 2 years, but the handover deadline has long passed with no sign of replacements. Just as everyone is weighed down by despair, Sullivan, on lookout duty, spots a strange vessel approaching on the horizon, yet the radar picks up no signal from it. Sullivan speculates it might be their long-awaited rotation ship, but Captain Hendricks senses something is off. Unable to determine whether the vessel is friend or foe, he immediately sounds the alarm, orders the other 3 to battle stations, and trains the cannon on the unidentified ship. The ship keeps closing in, and everyone's nerves are on edge. Cassidy, the communications officer, repeatedly hails the vessel over the radio but receives no response. The entire team waits for Hendricks to give the order to fire, but he changes his mind at the last moment.
Sullivan, get the dinghy. Go see. Use the outboard. Alone?
Sullivan is deeply reluctant, but as a soldier, he has no choice but to obey. The closer his boat gets to the ship, the stronger the sense of unease. He calls out in a friendly manner. Still no answer. The entire vessel is covered in rust, looking exactly like a ghost ship from old legends. To get to the bottom of things, Sullivan suppresses his fear and climbs aboard. To avoid complications, he casually switches off the walkie-talkie on his belt, a decision that nearly costs him his life. Inside the wheelhouse, everything is in disrepair. All electronic instruments are dead, clearly abandoned for a long time. Strangely, the crew members who should be aboard are nowhere to be found. Sullivan ventures deeper into the ship's hold and unexpectedly discovers 4 sets of protective gear, instantly realizing this is the rotation ship. But the fate of the 4 replacement soldiers remains a mystery. The ship's supplies are intact, and starving as he is, he immediately scavenges for food. Meanwhile, back at the tower, they've lost all contact with Sullivan. The captain is frantic with worry, convinced Sullivan has been killed. He prepares to activate the nuclear weapon to destroy the ship. The detonation device requires 2 separately held keys, one on his person, the other kept by Cassidy. Cassidy disagrees with this extreme measure but, bound by rank, surrenders her key. With both keys in place, the nuclear device at the base of the tower begins to slowly power up. Just moments before the fire command is given, Sullivan switches his walkie-talkie back on.
Sullivan, we've got live. Repeat, we've live.
No one here.
All clear.
The captain aborts the procedure just in time, averting total catastrophe, then instructs Sullivan to tow the rotation ship back to the tower. Half an hour later, Sullivan successfully tows the ship back to the tower. The captain assigns Baines, the maintenance specialist, to inspect and repair the ship. Then he goes to the bridge to retrieve the navigation log and plots the vessel's course by hand. When he reaches the end of the plotted course, an anomalous trajectory emerges. Meanwhile, Sullivan and Baines are privately hatching a different plan. This ship is their only chance to leave the tower. If they miss this opportunity, they'll have to wait another 2 years for the next rotation. Late at night, Baines boards the ship to repair the engine while Sullivan sends a false transmission to headquarters, claiming the replacement personnel have completed the handover and the squad will begin its return voyage in 3 days. A few hours later, Baines successfully repairs the ship. Sullivan then shares the news with Cassidy. After 2 years together, he has long since fallen in love with her, but when Cassidy learns of their plan, she flatly refuses. She insists that abandoning their post constitutes a serious breach of military discipline, and any evacuation plan must be reported to the captain and approved by headquarters. The next morning, the captain discovers the secret. He orders the ship's engine dismantled immediately, declaring that without authorization from headquarters, no one is permitted to leave the tower. This heavy-handed command ignites tensions within the squad. Sullivan openly argues with the captain in front of everyone. The captain draws his weapon to intimidate them, and only Cassidy's mediation finally gets everyone to sit down and negotiate. They arrive at a compromise. 2 people will take the ship back to the mainland to liaise with headquarters and request new rotation personnel and supplies. As the highest-ranking officer at the outpost, Hendricks must stay behind. Cassidy also volunteers to remain on duty. It's decided that Sullivan and Baines will make the return trip together. This arrangement is hard for Sullivan to accept. Unwilling to leave alone, he privately urges Cassidy to flee with him, but Cassidy refuses to become a deserter. Seeing her resolve, he offers to swap places. He'll stay behind and give her the chance to leave. Cassidy's reply shatters his hopes completely.
I don't love you, Sullivan. If that's what you want to hear. You're a human necessity. Easy way.
Sullivan's heart turns cold. He silently packs his belongings. That evening, the captain reminds the two men to rest well. The round trip to the mainland takes 14 days, a long and perilous journey. But as the captain steps out of Sullivan's room, his expression darkens instantly, as if he's harboring some secret. Late at night, while everyone sleeps, the outpost alarm suddenly blares. All personnel gear up and rush to the deck. Radar has detected another unknown vessel on the water. The captain immediately orders the cannon manned and ready. Sullivan notices something unusual. In the past, the captain always verified identity via radio first, but this time he's ordered them to fire directly.
Fire!
The first shell misses due to excessive range. As the crew reloads for a second volley, Sullivan finally sees clearly. The cannon is aimed at the very rotation ship they towed back days ago. Cassidy also notices the ship is gone from the shore and tries to intervene.
It's our boat.
Fire! It's our boat! Take your post! Fire!
Baines stops operating the cannon, and the captain points his gun directly at him, demanding he continue firing. Baines firmly refuses.
Step back!
Last chance, Baines. Fire now, or I will.
The ship catches fire upon impact and sinks completely. With their only means of escape destroyed, Baines loses control and charges at the captain.
Baines.
The three of them overpower Hendricks and lock him in the storage room. Cassidy seizes the opportunity to take the key from the captain's person. The next morning, Sullivan brings the captain breakfast. He demands to know why the captain ordered the ship destroyed. The captain finally reveals the truth. Based on the navigation log, he reconstructed the ship's complete route. The rotation ship had been heading toward the tower but made a sudden U-turn 16 kilometers out, then cut its engines and drifted. Two things don't add up. The ship approached at close range yet couldn't be detected by radar, and its apparent effort to avoid the tower. The captain suspects one of the four of them is an enemy spy, but lacking proof, he decided to destroy the ship. Sullivan listens, half believing. The next morning, the storage room is empty. Evidence at the scene suggests the captain escaped through the rear window and jumped into the sea. In these waters, far from any land, a lone person jumping overboard has zero chance of survival. Later, while going through the captain's room, Sullivan finds a navigation chart. After studying it, he begins to believe the captain's theory. The following day, the three plan to search the waters where the ship had lingered for clues. Cassidy and Baines will go together, while Sullivan stays behind at the tower. Before departing, Cassidy kisses Sullivan meaningfully. Then the two set off in the speedboat, pulling away from the tower. Left alone at the tower, Sullivan decides to fish to supplement their rations. When he pulls in the net, the sight before him makes his blood run cold. The captain's body is tangled in the mesh, a clear gunshot wound on his forehead. He was obviously murdered and dumped at sea, further confirming the theory that there's a spy among them. To avoid tipping off the enemy, Sullivan doesn't contact the two at sea. He begins piecing together all the clues. After reviewing personnel files, he discovers that Baines suffers from a severe mental illness and was only recruited because of his exceptional technical skills. As for Cassidy, after 2 years side by side, he trusts her completely. Sullivan reaches his conclusion. Baines is the spy. Meanwhile, Cassidy and Baines have reached the target waters to search for clues. If Baines truly is the mole, Cassidy is in grave danger. Sullivan watches anxiously from the deck with binoculars. It isn't until late at night that the speedboat finally returns. Strangely, only Cassidy is aboard. She explains that Baines jumped into the water of his own accord and his whereabouts are unknown. Sullivan sees through her lie. Late that night, after Cassidy has fallen asleep, he pulls up the duty logs from 3 months ago. On the day the rotation ship appeared, it was Cassidy who was manning the radar. The entire truth surfaces at once. The next day, Cassidy wakes to find Sullivan gone. She frantically tries to reach him on the walkie-talkie, but he never responds. Then she notices the 2 nuclear keys that had been hanging around her neck have vanished. Cassidy realizes something terrible is about to happen and sprints toward the control room, but it's too late. Sullivan has already inserted both keys into the console. Cassidy drops her cover and admits she is the spy. Her mission was to seize this strategically vital stretch of ocean. devotion. 3 months ago, she exploited her duty shift to dismantle the tower's positioning beacon. When the rotation ship arrived in the area, she covertly guided it off course, then used the cover of fog to take a small boat to the ship alone and killed all 4 replacement soldiers one by one. Faced with Cassidy's desperate pleas, Sullivan doesn't hesitate. He activates the self-destruct sequence. The expected explosion never comes. The screen only displays a string of garbled code. They both finally understand. This offshore tower was never equipped with nuclear weapons. The so-called nuclear deterrent was nothing more than a bluff designed to deceive the enemy. Now only 2 remain on the tower. The pair set aside their conflict and animosity, staying on together at this lonely outpost in the sea.